If you're dating over 50, one of the most important things you can learn, honestly, maybe even the most important thing, is how to recognize emotional availability. And that's because what I see over and over again with the women that I work with is not that they're meeting bad men, it's that they're meeting emotionally available men and trying to build a relationship anyway. And that's when they get frustrated. You see, when you're feeling frustrated because you don't understand what's going on, you start questioning yourself. You start wondering, is it me? Am I asking for too much? And the answer is no. You're not asking for too much. You're just asking the wrong person. Emotional availability isn't about how charming or nice somebody is. It's also not about chemistry. And it's definitely not about how much attention he gives you at the beginning of the relationship. It's about capacity. What you need to be asking yourself when you're feeling frustrated or confused is, does this person have the emotional capacity to show up, communicate, be consistent, and build something real with me? You can have amazing conversations, great dates, and a strong attraction, and still be with someone who is completely unavailable for a relationship, or at least for the relationship you're looking for. One of the biggest signs I see is when a man says, I'm not really sure what I'm looking for. And when he says that, I really want you to hear what I'm saying. At this stage of life, over 50 and probably even over 40, and maybe some people in their 30s, most people have enough life experience to know if they want a relationship or not. So when someone says that, it's not confusion. It's either hesitation or it's avoidance. And if you're someone who knows what you want and it's a relationship, that mismatch matters. Another big one is someone who is recently divorced and says they're totally fine. By the way, one of my favorite acronyms for fine that I learned a long time ago is fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and evasive. I always like that one because it's very accurate. Think about it. When somebody asks you how you're doing and you say fine, how are you really feeling? Now, I'm not saying someone who's divorced can't date. Of course they can. I did it, and many people do. But it's about the healing, and healing takes time. And if someone hasn't taken the time to process what happens is that many times you're going to be with someone who is physically present, but who is still emotionally tied to their past. And by the way, it doesn't matter why they got divorced or whose fault it was or whose idea it was. None of that matters. Being emotionally tied to their past can show up in little ways, in their conversations, in their reactions, in what they're available for. And then, of course, there's the ex. If he's constantly talking about how difficult she was, or how crazy she was, or how everything was her fault, that's something you really need to pay attention to. I can't tell you how many times I got off of a phone call with somebody because that's all they ever talked about. Emotional available people, emotionally available people, take some level of ownership for their past relationships. Since no matter what people say, it takes two to make a marriage work and two to break it apart. When I got divorced the second time, it was because of alcohol, but I still had to own my part, like not speaking up or keeping things inside because I didn't want to talk. And a lot of times I didn't want to talk about important stuff was because I didn't want to make waves or make him angry. And that was on me. And I had to do some work around that. And when people have done some work around healing, they've taken time to reflect on their part of it and how they're going to do things going forward and show up differently. They've learned something from the relationship and they've grown. When someone places all the blame on the other person without taking any accountability, in other words, owning their shit, that is a pattern, and patterns repeat themselves. Something else I hear all the time is, I'm just really busy. Yeah, a lot of people are busy. And nowadays, it seems like everybody's busy. But the truth is, nobody is too busy for what? and who they value. If finding a partner is important to them, you're going to know. When someone is emotionally available and interested, you'll see it in their actions and in their consistency. Not perfection, not constant texting, but consistent behavior and follow through when they say they're going to do something. You're not going to be guessing. You're not going to be anxious. You're not going to be wondering where you stand. So I'm going to tell you a little story about something that happened a week after I met my husband in person for the first time. After we met, we started talking on the phone consistently. He worked second shift, so it was usually sometime during his break at night between 8 and 10, which is great for me because I'm a late night person. And he said he was going to call at 4 the next day. And that wasn't really what I'd seen so far because usually didn't give me an exact time. But I need to, I'd still be at work and it was earlier than usual, but okay, whatever. Well, he didn't call at 4. And honestly, I thought nothing of it at the time since I was working anyway. But what happened later when he called is what surprised me. So he called probably around 5, I think. And the first thing he said was, I'm sorry for not calling you when I said I would at 4 o'clock. Now, I don't remember exactly what his words were, but I know it was something like that. And he said it wasn't a big deal. I figured you got busy at work and I was working anyway. So he says, can you do me a favor and let me apologize? And I said, sure, as long as I can say something when you're done. And he said, of course. So he continued and told me, I said I'd call at 4 and I didn't. I'm a man of my word. And when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. So I'm sorry for not calling on time. And I'm not going to lie, I was a little taken aback by that. So I said, look, I appreciate you apologizing. It means a lot. It was actually pretty huge. But I want you to know that it wasn't really a big deal because I was at work. I knew you were at work. I figured you just got busy. But with that being said, if you said you were picking me up at 7 for a date and didn't show up on time and didn't send a call, didn't send a text or call saying that you were running late, that I would have a problem with. But since you were at work, it's really not a big deal, I promise. And he said, okay. And that was it. But I remember that conversation like it was yesterday because it was so not what I was used to. And because he also showed me what kind of man he was. Integrity was a huge thing with him, as it was with me. We actually both had that written in our profiles. And since he had been sober for 30 years at the time and done personal development work on himself, I knew that's where him wanting to apologize was coming from. And also note here that I knew he was sober for 30 years, which meant that he was honest, open, and vulnerable about his past with me really early on, because this literally happened probably within 10 days of us first connecting. So it's actually really kind of amazing in a relationship with somebody who's done some inner work and some healing. And now for this final one, which is big. You've been dating for a while and the relationship is still not defined. It's been months and you're not really sure what it is or how he feels. And every time you bring it up, he either brushes it off or he says you'll talk about it another time later, or it's turned into something vague. Now, I'm not saying you have to put a label on everything, but if you're a woman over 50 and you know what you want, and it's more than a situationship, and you're looking for something committed and you want a long-term relationship, and you want to know if you're the only person they're dating, then having that talk is important. And if they're being vague, then that's intentional. Emotionally available men are willing to have real conversations, even if they're uncomfortable. So here's what I want you to take away from all of this. Emotional availability isn't something you create in someone else. You can't do that, and it's not your job anyway. But it is something you need to recognize. And when you start recognizing it early on, everything changes. You stop over investing your time and energy. You stop overthinking and you stop trying to turn something into what it's not. And instead, you start choosing differently. So let's be real. Your goal isn't just to find somebody. Your goal is to find someone who is available for the kind of relationship you actually want. And that starts with trusting what you see instead of what you hope for and what you're hearing. If you want to know how somebody feels about you, you watch what they do, not what they say. And if this resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these have you experienced the most of in dating? And if you're a woman over 50 and want more support with this, make sure you subscribe to this channel since I talk a lot about how to date with confidence, clarity, and self respect. Remember, your best relationship starts with you.